Hey, welcome back to How to Barbecue Right. I'm Malcolm Reed. Today I'm going to show you how I do a low and slow whole brisket on my pellet grill. Now the key to this one is keeping those temps low so we get maximum smoke on it. It's really going to build that bark. It's going to be a long cook, but the reward is worth it. You know it's going to be good. Let's get to cooking. So I'm starting with the whole brisket today, and this one weighed almost 16 pounds. I saw it at the grocery store, certified Angus beef brand. I know it's a good brisket, so I put it in the basket. The first thing I'm gonna do is get it trimmed up because I need to get some of this thick fat off of it. I always start with this thick vein of fat that's over on the side. You can kind of pull it back with your hand, work it a little bit, then use your knife to remove it. Then any of the oxidized meat around the edges, the gray stuff, you wanna take that off. I kind of round out the flat, take a little bit of the thin side off, and it shapes out this flat right here. You can kind of see the way the grain's running. You know it's going to make some beautiful slices when it's cooked. Now for the point, I also expose a little bit of it. We flip the brisket over and then take off the thick areas of fat. You can take off a little more on the point end because it's marbled, but on the flat end of the brisket, I want to leave about a 1/4 inch of fat. And that's all there is to trimming this brisket. It's pretty easy. We're ready for some seasoning now. So I'm gonna flip the brisket over. The first thing that I'm hitting it with is some hot barbecue rub. You could use whatever favorite brisket rub you have. I really like the hot because it has a little more pepper, a little bit less sweet. And it's gonna give a nice barbecue color on the outside. That's where the mahogany is gonna come from. You wanna make sure you get the edges. Brisket's a big cut of beef. It can take a lot of seasoning. Now I'm also gonna give it a little bit of texture, a little bit of extra salt and pepper using my TX rub. You don't have to go as heavy with this, especially on the bottom side. So we'll be cooking it fat down. That looks good. We're gonna pat that in. Now I'm gonna flip the brisket over and we're gonna do the same thing to the flat side. And this is the side that I'm gonna keep up the entire cook. First it's gonna get the hot rub. Nice layer. Pat it in just a little bit, just so it sticks to the meat. There's no binder here. We're just letting the beef hold it. Coming back with some of that TX texture, baby. I like that. That's gonna make that bark look good. Also patting it in lightly. Now that's it for the seasonings on the outside of this brisket, but it's not ready to go on the pit yet. I really want them to have time to work on the surface, to kind of melt in. That's what's going to absorb flavor. It's going to help us make a good bark, and it's going to make a nice smoke ring. Now this is going to be a low and slow cook, so I'm going to put it on the pit overnight. Now the smoke's going to get all around the brisket on the pellet grill because I'm going to keep it about 195 degrees until it's time to wrap. I plan to put the brisket on at 11 p.m. and wrap it the next morning. So I'm gonna take it inside and it's gonna get a rest for a few hours. It's been about 3 hours since I've seasoned the brisket. It's time to fire up this Traeger pellet grill. First thing you wanna do is make sure you have plenty of pellets if you're gonna let it run overnight and get some sleep. I'm filling the hopper all the way up. So I've got the Traeger turned to 195 degrees, hit ignite. That's gonna give us a nice slow smoke. And actually on mine, it's got a feature for super smoke. Gives it even more, so I'm gonna engage that too. And it doesn't matter what pellet grill you're cooking on. If you're running at 195, it's gonna give you a nice low, heavy smoke. That's really what's gonna put the flavor on this brisket. All right, so the grill is at 195 degrees. Perfect temperature. It took about 20 minutes for it to come up, not long at all. So now it's time to put this brisket on. We're just gonna set it on the rack, kind of form it up the way you want it to cook. We're just kind of bunching the flat up just a little bit. Got the point pointed over to where most of the heat comes from. It's pretty much in the center of the grill. I'm gonna get the lid closed. We're gonna put this brisket to bed. I'll be back to check on it at about 7 a.m. All right, the brisket's been on for 8 hours. You can see here on the grill, we're still setting right around that 195 degrees. I wanna open it up, and I know it's gonna be time to wrap it. Let's see what it looks like after 8 hours. It's turned dark, it's kind of swole up some. This is exactly what I would expect from a good brisket. Let me get it off here to show you. You can see the way the bark's set. It's got beautiful color now, starting to render down. So I'm gonna get it over to the cutting board. We're gonna wrap it up in butcher paper. So I've just got some butcher paper pulled off here. I pulled off 2 layers and kind of overlapped it. And all I'm gonna do is bring it up and over the brisket. And we're just gonna tuck it in best we can around the brisket. You want it kind of tight. The other side, we're just gonna bring up, do the same thing. Tuck it underneath the brisket. And then for the sides, it's real easy. All you have to do is to tuck them right under. We've got it wrapped up nice and tight. Before I put it back on the pit, I'm gonna go ahead and get my meat probe in it. I've just got a ThermalWorks dot going right in the center part of the flat. You can feel when you go in, you wanna go about halfway down. And we're sitting on about 150 degrees internal after 8 hours of cooking. That's right where I expected it to be. at this point. So I'm going right back to the rack, oriented the exact same way. It's gonna run my probe wire right out the door. And at this point, I can turn the heat up some. I'm gonna crank it up to 250 degrees and we're gonna let it finish out right there. When this brisket hits about 202, it's gonna be ready to come off. All right, it's been a little over 8 hours. I've had this brisket wrapped on my pellet grill. You can see it's finally hit 200 degrees internal. Now, I haven't messed with this brisket the entire time it's been wrapped. I put it on at 11 p.m. last night, wrapped it after 8 hours, another little bit over 8 hours in the wrap, so it's been 16 total hours. And then I am gonna verify it with my thermopin just to make sure it's feeling right. Oh man, that's like butter. Like butter, look at that, 200. I know this point end's soft. Oh yeah, 205. That's perfect. It feels good picking it up. That paper did its job. And I'm gonna set it in a dry cooler. And I'm gonna put a lid on it. And I want it to hang out for a minimum of an hour. I'm gonna let it go 2 hours. Then I'm gonna unwrap it, slice it up, and you know I gotta try it. It's been a long cook on this low and slow brisket, but I know it's gonna be good. So after this 2 hour rest in the cooler, it's finally time to see how our brisket turned out. About to run out of daylight again, but I gotta get this brisket unwrapped. Let's start untucking the sides. Whew. This is the moment of truth when you pull one out, and let's just see what it looks like. Look at that beautiful bark. I mean, it's sitting in this paper, it absorbs all that moisture. This got a little jiggle to it. That's what you wanna see, that brisket. That means it's loose. So let's pick it up, move it off the paper, set it on my pan here. I can get this out of the way. Paper did its job. It protected that brisket, but it let it make this bark on it. So now let's slice this dude up, see how it turns out. First, I'll take the tip off. See if it's got a smoke ring. Y'all tell me, I can't see. Oh yeah, that is beautiful right there. Just gonna cut it into some nice flat pieces, about a 1/4 inch thick. That's how you want a brisket flat slice. I'm gonna pull one out here, see if it's tender. I mean, look at that. That's a clapper right there, Jack. Still screaming hot. I see it smoking. Is it gonna pull apart? That's the pull test. That pulls perfect. Now this is a pellet brisket with the smoke ring, bark on the outside, just like a stick burner. How's it taste? That tastes like money. Woo. Even that fat on the bottom, that's delicious. It's cutting perfect, full of juice. We'll get back here as we go through the flat. When you get back to this point, we start getting into some of that point up under the flat. That's where all that juice is in it. Now to get the burn ends, I'm gonna cut them off this end, this little ridge that we trimmed out. We'll lay that over, come back, and I can cut it into cubes. Make some delicious little morsels of burn end. That's big enough to half right there. I can get some doubles out of it. You don't think that burn end's got some juice to it? Look at that. I gotta try that. My goodness, that melts in your mouth right there. That's the fattiness of that CAB brisket. Now for these fatty slices, you wanna turn the brisket. We're gonna come back across the grain here. There's another good burn end piece. On the edges, true burn ends. This isn't no fake burn ends here. And then you can slice it as thick or as thin as you want on the point. But I'm going about the same width as the slices. So you get some of that fattiness. Knife glides right through it. That's beautiful. You know I'm gonna try that point. It's really my favorite part of the brisket. I tell you what, low and slow on the pellet grill takes a long time, but man, is it worth it. Hey, thanks for checking us out today at How to Barbecue Right. If you like what we're doing, subscribe to our channel. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at the end of the week, Shell and I will talk about this brisket, all the other delicious stuff we're cooking on our weekly podcast. Y'all can give that a listen too. We'll see y'all next time. It's time to eat some brisket. Tell you what, man, pellet grill, it's no joke on the brisket if you give it time. That's what I'm talking about. Bark, smoke ring, fatty brisket. I call that delicious. That's good. That's real good.